Hey Addicts, welcome back. We're here to talk about Arifureta Volume 9. I just briefly want to say this is a spoiler review, so if you guys don't want any spoilers of any kind or you want to go into the book completely blind, I suggest clicking off now and coming back later. But with that being said, we're going to start off briefly describing the plot. This is focused around Hajime and his group going to the last labyrinth that they have to conquer, and we get to see that this is in demon territory, and it's also located at the snow mountains. So not only do we have the prospect of being attacked by enemies in this, but we also see that they have to deal with the extreme weather that's at the labyrinth itself. We're going to talk about two different things, the book in a macro, a broader spectrum, and then dissect it a little bit more going into the micro. So the big thing I wanted to talk about as an overview right now is one thing that Hajime and his group find maybe the most important when they're going into a labyrinth, and that is, what is the labyrinth's main theme? And this is actually probably one of my favorite themes for Labyrinth that we've seen, and that is dealing with oneself or facing internal struggles and trying to overcome that. I think for a story like Arifureta that has a lot of powerful characters, this is just something that I ultimately find interesting, because it's one thing to see them face against, all these powerful people or immensely, big waves of foes, but it's really cool to see, more of the inner conflict for these powerful characters, because nothing's going to phase them in a power play, but seeing, struggles that maybe necessarily you can't pound your fist into, I like seeing that. Now, granted, Hajime has... that's one thing I love about Hajime. He doesn't necessarily face that the way you think he would, but at least for the other characters as well, you get to see a really great insight internally, not only what they're thinking, how they're feeling, but also, maybe overcoming some things that, we've seen build up in the series before this point. Another thing that I really want to highlight as an overview is the hero party. The hero party has had such a great development through the series. I mean, even if you go back and watch my Volume 1 review when I'm with Michael, you can see that, I think the first impressions of the hero party is just, I hate them. They're boring and they're assholes, and at the surface, the author does a great job of, making you feel a certain way about them. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but at least that's how I felt. And, he really developed them and built them up. This is not a series that I thought I would care at all for any of the side characters. And the fact that, he has taken some group that I didn't find any interest in and developed it in a way that I think they're actually starting to, be a main part of the series. And so... there's different ways. We're going to talk about a little bit of that later on in the video. But just as a whole, I wanted to highlight them as, definitely getting the improvement. I think a lot of people are going to like them in this book, and I think even love them by the end of this book and into the next book. With that being said, too, I also, and this is maybe starting to, tread way into the micro level of it, but I love to see the Shizuku focus in this book. I didn't mention before, but this is the first two-parter that we're going to have of not an arc, but just like, well, I guess it's technically an arc. So we get to see that since it is a part one of part two, we focus on fewer characters, but we get an expanded part of that. And one of the characters that's at the forefront of that is Shizuku. And I absolutely love that. We get to see, like I said, a lot of her internal stuff. There's been a lot of build up to that. So that's going to lead into, I don't want to drag this on too long, but I do want to talk about, things I liked in general and the little moments. I guess I'll start off with the little moments, because these are just little things. I could rattle on for like 30 minutes probably in a separate video about all the little stuff I like, but I'm just going to pull out a few things here that I like, because that's probably it's not the main reason why I read this series, but I think it's one that I appreciate probably on a more regular basis when I'm reading the book. and it is these like funny, you know, little moments between the relationships of these characters. I think at the beginning, there's this scene, and I don't remember it when I read it in the web novel, so I'm not sure if it's added or if I just forgot it, but there's a moment where they're getting ready to enter the labyrinth, and there's these cute little bunnies, and Hajime has the best reaction to seeing them. He's just mercilessly killing them, and so there's a reason for it, and I love the reactions and, you know, the people questioning him and everything like that. But that's one that I really like. Another thing happens really early on is with Tio and her interaction with some of the people at the hero party. I'm going to try to talk more about stuff that happens at the beginning, you know, so I'm not going into too much spoiler. The other thing, I'm only going to mention two more, is the author, I don't know how he really wants us to fit in canon. I think it's more of just like, you know, maybe it's a thing that the other characters perceive, or at least Hajime, because like maybe he's a fan of it. But and we've gotten reference to this before, but like Kaori having a stand, and sometimes it comes out, which is probably why, you know, you see me with my JoJo shirt. This is from the wrong part, but still, I get a kick out of that. Since I've been, you know, getting into more of JoJo, I appreciate references like that. The other thing too I want to mention is there's a moment of dialogue between Shizuku and I think Yu, and there's a part where like Shizuku like screws up, and she does like a cat person kind of like way of talking, you know, where she adds like the meow or something, and so that was funny. There's also a lot of stuff with her and Hajime towards the end of the book that I did find. But with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit more about things that are probably interesting to you guys, and that is, you know, more of the structure of the story. And Shizuku's development is one that I personally love. She's a character that I didn't think I would ever care about when I first read the volume 1, but over the course of the story, she's really grown on me. And seeing, you know, I guess that's maybe more since, you know, we got Kaori, and since Kaori came into more of the fold, obviously Shizuku came with her because they're best friends. And I mean, like, a package deal in terms of, like, the reader understanding her character, not so much like she's with them. Because I think you get to see that as early as, like, volume 3, volume 4. But, you know, just to see all of this build up, and even having small little things like, you know, Shizuku being referenced as the final boss, you know, and you get to see that, you know, it's been leading up to this, and finally we see the, you know, explosive part, and it actually ends up, you know, dealing with a problem that Shizuku's been facing her whole life that you get to see through backstory, and, you know, expounded upon in this book. The other thing I think I mentioned before, but I just want to talk about the copies. I think that's a great way to have the internal struggle, you know, having an internal struggle personified into a version of yourself that's like tangible, that you can actually fight and interact with. I think that's a really cool way to tackle that kind of storytelling, because it sets it apart differently. Because, you know, a lot of different stories that have powerful foes or powerful protagonists, they, at one point or another, they're going to deal with some internal struggle, because that's just one of the things that, you know, you're kind of led into or backed into a corner if you have powerful characters. And I like how the author does a great, you know, flip-flop on that with, like, Hajime's character, but then also having this aspect there. So I really enjoy that. I mean, I'm kind of a sucker for, like, doppelganger-type stories, you know, so with that being said, that's one other reason why I really like it here too, but I think it has a lot of impact on the story and the development of the characters as well. The other thing I want to highlight just real quick that I thought was just a great way to, like, you know, you maybe don't catch it. I think a lot of readers and fans would, but I think it's maybe not one that most people would highlight as great, but I thought it was really good, and that is in the backstory, or it's kind of like a mixture of backstory slash daydream slash, you know, reminiscing type thing that the Labyrinths is maybe doing on its own towards Shizuku, or like stimulating it for her. But we get to see that in her memories, she has this moment with Kaori when they're really young in like elementary school, and they have to, they're going to be a part of a play, and the class starts off by asking Shizuku if she wants to be the princess, and because she loves cute things, she really is all for it. But then when Kaori says that she'll play the knight, the class kind of shifts and like, oh no, Kaori should be the princess and Shizuku should be the knight. And, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there's a part, if you read this book on Amazon, the random ass page number gives you is like 3096. I don't know if you guys will ever find that, but there's a great way to where it starts that off by showing you that, and then because of the events that happens in the story with, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think it's just summed up really good on that page. So if you guys, if you bought the book, I encourage you to go to that page and check it out. I know that's not the actual page because it's not 3,000 pages long, obviously, but if you can find that on an Amazon version, just read that. I think that is some part that may not be as appreciated as it should be. But I think that's a great way of, I don't know if it's necessarily considered like a full circle thing, but I think it's just a great way. It's like a great metaphor to what Shizuku and Kaori's relationship and roles have been with each other throughout the series so far. And I think it's a great way to do that. Now, I'm not going to try to keep this too long. I'm going to try to keep this relatively short. So I'm going to start winding this down. We get to see an extra chapter for the book. And this centers around, it's like I can't remember how they describe it in the book. It's like a girls' midnight snack party or something like that. And canonally, I think it takes place in between book 8 and 9 when Hajime has given the more powerful tools to the hero party, and they're testing them out to try to figure out what all has changed. And it's after that we get to see that all of the girls of the book are sitting down and they're talking about Shizuku in particularly and her love life. And I did like this chapter. I am a personal fan of the extra chapters. I know the author in his afterwards has said he's not sure if people like it. If he's listening to this, which I doubt he is, but if you are, hey, they are really good. I will say this is probably not my favorite extra chapter, but because of how much I've come to love Shizuku as a character, I do like seeing this little bit with her. And I think you might even get some of the thing I was talking about earlier with the metaphor expanded upon here. That's probably my only gripe with the book is in the extra chapter, we do get some more rehashing of things that he's already talked about. And I guess, I go back and forth because it's like, oh man, it would have been really cool if we would have gotten a little bit farther into story. But, because of how it's probably better to break it up, I'm fine with us just getting the extra chapter instead of, expanding a little bit further on the main story in this book. Plus, I think it's a good reward for towards the end of the book as well, kind of like a little extra thing. No pun intended. But the other thing, too, that I want to highlight is, because this is part 1 of part 2, and that's the first time he's done that in the light novel series, I thought I'd give my opinion on it. I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. Some people might be pissed. I am a little sad whenever you have a story stop in the middle. Especially in shows, I think it's, especially tragic when you have cliffhanger type stuff. I think in terms of how he broke this up, it gives you a satisfying ending, so you're not going to be pissed. You're just going to be excited to see what's next. And and for a lot of people that are Shizuku fans like myself, you'll get that little reward at the end. I personally don't think it's would I prefer him just extend the book? Obviously yes, but I know he can't do that because of publishing reasons. So I think the way he did it, how he was had to do it, because there was so much of the web novel that he had to write for this Labyrinth, that he did it really well. I guess I'll go into my rating now. This is an FFA, a 9 out of 10. It bounced back better than the last volume. I liked all of the action. I think the 1v1 fights in particular are, I don't know if they're some of the best, but I do like it a lot. I don't know. Maybe when the series officially ends, I'll go back and like rank all of them, but I think the 1v1 fights are a specifically important highlight for the fight section of the book. And I also love seeing the development internally of the characters, and also, seeing that all come to fruition. But anyway, that's my rating for this. I guess briefly I will talk about the harem thing, just because we made, I don't want to say a big deal, but we touched on it in the last volume. And I've read all of the story through the web novels since that volume came out, because I really wanted to see what direction it was heading in, and to, how it played off. And, I don't know if I said this in the other video, but I'm not somebody that's read a lot of harem stories, so I can't really say if I hate the genre specifically, but I can say that I don't have any face value interest in that style, and I don't relate to it at all. So that's part of the reason why I have that initial reaction to it. But also I think, as I've described before, I'm not going to rehash it, I think the way they set up the beginning of the series kind of is conservative, when it, or devalues some relationship aspects when the harem aspect comes into play. But on the flip side of that, after reading the web novel, I have still loved the series, and because all the characters are written very well and they put that theme off till the end, or closer to the end of the series, and it's gotten time for you to really connect with the characters, I think it's hard for a fan not to like it, just because it's, more than two characters that you all love, having more interaction on a different level. So I take it for what it is, and I still enjoy it. So that's just the little thing I wanted to say there. The other thing I'll say real quick is for the next volume, in the afterwords, or the afterthought, the author did say that he was going to be visiting back to other characters in Tortoise. Whether that is characters like Remy and Miyu to set up the thing that's coming after the Labyrinth, who knows? Maybe he'll add some other stuff in like an extra chapter or something. I would be up for either. I like seeing new stuff that wasn't, originally in the web novel, so I'm going to be fine with either or. I think the next volume is likely to be just the back half of the Labyrinth that we're in right now, and then whatever extra stuff he wants to touch on. But I don't think we'll see past, what he's already written for the web novel, past the Labyrinth that we're in. Unless he wants to go with like a cliffhanger ending type thing, which I think there's a way he could do it that is satisfyingly done and not frustrating. But anyway, guys, that's going to conclude this review. I'm sorry it's a little bit longer. That's just because I love talking about Arifureta. Which, speaking of which, if you guys want to talk with me, discuss, the next volume, what's going on in the story, the anime, comments down below. I will talk your ear off. I will say I do have something coming up for the anime. We're going to be doing an episode-by-episode thing, but there is something before the anime airs that I'm wanting to get out, and I'm hopefully going to have that up either the day after this one uploads or the same week, especially before the anime comes out. Otherwise, it'll just be a disaster. But yeah, so I didn't know it was this close. It's really close. It's just like a week or two away, so I'm excited. But anyway, I'll save that for that video, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace, Addicts.